epic, trash,
Auto sniper.
trash, trash, in this game, trash.
Okay guys, welcome to this video today, and I hope you are having an amazing day going for them wins on Fortnite and just grinding it out. You will get there in the end and you will be insane with a little bit of practice. So in today's video, I just want to be talking about a topic that not many people bring up and not many people on controller know. This is going to be Scuf versus Claw. Now, this is an important topic and a lot of people don't even know about the claw technique. It's very strange to look at, and these guys have got two differences from standard controller, and it really does put you worlds apart. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about the differences and how it can help your gameplay, and if you go for this in your game, you will see massive improvements to your game if you are on controller. Okay, so let's just quickly talk about the actual difference between using paddles, or sometimes known as Scuf, or using claw. Now these are two different things. So paddles is what I use. I use an Xbox Elite controller that has up to 4 paddle combinations. Personally for me, just based on my hands and how it feels playing, I only use 2 of the paddles, and I've only binded 2 of them. So I could technically have 2 extra slots on my controller, but I just physically can't really play that well with them, and it's really just down to personal preference. Now, what is the difference between paddles and playing normally? Well, paddles, for example, enable you to bind your face controls. So this might be triangle, circle, square, X, Y, B, depending on if you are PlayStation or if you are Xbox Elite. Now, why is this helpful? And this is the main thing and about why you should switch to control with paddles, or whether you should go onto playing claw. Now, there's a few main differences, okay? For me personally, my binds, I have used jump and edit. And these are very significant binds for a few main reasons, guys. Number one, when you are playing controller and you want to get people killed in the game, you need to make sure that your fingers and thumbs are not coming off the joysticks. That's one of the number one golden rules when playing controller, is that you do not want your fingers to come off of those controls. Otherwise, you're going to have a dead zone. There's going to be a dead spot where you are not moving and you are not aiming. Let's pretend that you are not using a Scuf, paddles, Xbox Elite, or playing claw. Now, you'll be using a standard Xbox or PlayStation controller, and you want to be able to build. You want to be able to jump. Now, if you want to be able to jump, the default option to jump is to press X. This basically requires you to quickly take your thumb from the joysticks and press X. Now, you can do this very quickly, but there's always that small time that you've got your fingers away from that controller and the joystick. And guess what? It also disables you from being able to jump as well as aim. Now this is one of the main things that you'll notice if you're playing against somebody on PC, on playing claw, or using paddles. They'll seamlessly be able to build, jump, shoot midair, and you're just questioning yourself like, how did that happen? I physically can't do that. And that's literally just because of their binds. Now, there is various options for normal control. These can be using L3 for PlayStation, and which is the left joystick, pressing that down. That was an option that I did find worked quite well for my edits. You can also use that for jump, and in this case you can do 90s a lot quicker because you do not have to take your fingers off of the joysticks. Now this is an option that I would definitely recommend to you guys if you do not have the funds to be able to buy paddles, or if you do not have the ability to be able to play claw, and we'll get into claw in a little bit. So ultimately, why is this a disadvantage then? Well, it's really down to the premise of compromise. If you do decide to use jump or edit for L3, you got to change that out and compromise on another button. So if you use jump and L3, your edit's still going to be on the right side. If you use edit for L3, your jump's still going to be on X. So ultimately you can't have the best of both worlds, unless you do go down some crazy combinations and ultimately remap your control, which will take a lot of time to practice. From this gameplay here that I am using an Xbox Elite controller with paddles, this is probably around the 3rd to 4th day I was able to practice well with the Elite controller. As many of you guys do know, I used to use PlayStation controller religiously with my old Scuf, and then I had to switch over to the Xbox Elite after getting my PC because it just didn't recognise my Scuf controller anymore. Now this might not seem like a big deal, but I cannot tell you how hard it was to change my reaction times, how it felt in my hands, the movement of the joysticks, because the controller is slightly bigger than the PlayStation. These things just had to be relearned. There's just different reactions, different movement on the controls, and it's taken me around 2 weeks to the point where I'm at today, where I am confident enough to be able to use the Xbox Elite controller with the paddles. And still today, I would say I'm around 60% off of what I used to be. So it takes a long time to learn these things, guys. And it's like anything, if you do go for the paddles on controller, you've got to put the practice in, and it will be very frustrating at the start. You'll be getting killed, you'll be forgetting, you'll be pressing your old buttons all the time. These are normal things, but ultimately, if you do decide to go down a paddle route, guys, there's reports online, some people saying they go from a 6 out of 10 over to a 9, or they go from a 4 up to a 7. And based upon my own past experiences, I do fully support this argument, and I do not think that they are over exaggerating. I would definitely recommend this option. It is very pricey, so it's something you will have to discuss with yourselves and ultimately decide whether or not you want to put that money and that investment into a controller. But of course Christmas is coming up as well, so you might be able to get it then. So then moving on to claw. Claw. Where do we start, claw? For those of you who don't know, and a lot of people do not know this, it's funny actually, because before I had even started playing Fortnite, I did not know anything about claw. I didn't know it existed. I just assumed everybody holds their control the same way. But it turns out they don't, by a long shot. Now, I will put a picture up of someone holding a controller in the claw position, and it can vary. You can do so many different combinations, double claw, single claw. I've even seen an octopus. God knows what that is, but it is just a different way of holding a controller ultimately. Now, it's a cheaper way than using paddles because you can use this with a standard controller, and this is what a lot of the pro players in fact use. Ghost Aiden, Face Sway, all use claw, and they are some of the best controller players out there. Now we've got other controller players such as Nick Merckx who use the paddles. Generally the difference between paddles and claw is just preference, guys, but as you can see from when I've shown you the picture of the claw player, it looks very different to get used to. And ultimately the claw, what's the whole advantage of it is back to the argument I was mentioning before in part 1 where I was discussing the paddles. Ultimately when you're using claw, you just do not have to take your hands off any of the joysticks. You can use your middle index finger, as you can see, to press all of your controls. Y, B, triangle, square, X, A. You can use your middle finger for all of those. The disadvantage of this is, and a lot of people have been saying this, is that it does strain your hands, and potentially some people have reported having bad hands, bad movement, and potentially arthritis later on in your lives. So this is just something that you're going to have to try and figure out as well. Like everything, there's pros and there's cons. Which is better between paddles and claw? Well, I'd say ultimately in terms of the skill and being able to do it, these are the same thing. Ultimately the paddles enable you to not use those right hand buttons, and you don't have to take your fingers or thumbs off of the joysticks. And ultimately claw, it does exactly the same, guys. So it is really down to personal preference. Now the advantages of the paddle is that it's much more convenient and it hurts your hand less, and ultimately I found the paddles to be something that I really do think are comfortable after a few weeks of playing. And finally, the advantage of using the claw is just much cheaper. You can buy a box stand control straight from Amazon or any game shop, and you can get straight down to it. The disadvantage using claw, it takes a long time to practice. Ultimately, if you do play the standard way of using your middle finger for triggers, your index fingers for switching weapons, and your thumbs for selecting items and inventory slots, it's a big change. I have tried it a few times before I bought my Xbox Elite, and let me tell you, it does hurt your hands at the start. I've never naturally been one of these people who can bend their fingers into these strange positions before, so ultimately you might find it better. It's really down to personal preference. To conclude though, I would definitely recommend either or these combinations. Using paddles and using claw really does bring you to another level in terms of improving on controller. It reduces the skill gap between mouse and keyboard because you are able to engage when you are jumping, and you are able to switch to edit mode and switch mode so much more easier and simpler. I would fully recommend this, guys, if you are hoping to improve your game, even if you're playing casual or want to be the guy going pro. Ultimately, these are very important things, and I definitely look at these options. Thank you for watching anyway, guys. I really do appreciate all of your support you've had. If you do enjoy my videos, please let me know by showing a like or comments any improvements that I could make in my videos. Thanks a lot, guys, and good luck grinding out those Fortnite wins.